Good evening, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, or good night, depending on where you are in the world. How's everyone doing tonight? Welcome to OmniPixel Gaming. My name is Tree Frog, and we're here with a new show for you called Behind the Pixels. So what this is a chance to talk to makers, creators, and artists from our community and also from the big old internet. So it's a chance for us to kind of see what they do, how they do it, why they do it, and what inspires them. So today we're talking to Jake, but Jake's also known in OmniPixel as Kaj or Kajison. Also, damn it, Kaj. That's Kaj.
I knew that was coming. In there.
But he's here today to talk about D&D. So he's going to talk a little bit with us about how we set it up, some character design kind of things, how to look for a campaign, how to DM, and of course, he is going to share some of his stories. So welcome, Kaj. How you doing?
I'm doing very, very good. I'm glad to be here. How are you doing today, Shannon?
Not too bad. Not too bad. Just one of those long days, you know?
That's true. And it is Monday after all.
Kaj raced home after work just to do this, just to meet with y'all. So we need to thank you on that. So we're going to talk about D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. Yay, Mondays. Boktai, you're a sick man. A sick man. All right. So a little bit about D&D. I guess one of the things we should just start with is when we say D&D or Dungeons and Dragons, what do we mean?
So from my understanding of it, I know it's like a loose term, but whenever you think Dungeons and Dragons, you think of, late night gaming, just tabletop hanging with your buddies. You're all, role playing out characters, fighting monsters and, saving princesses. That's kind of like the whole cliche, scenario. But there's a lot more to it than just going out saving people.
And going out and saving the damsel in distress. Hopefully that's a little
always, yeah.
So most of this happens, especially how we're going to be talking about today, is the imagination-driven one. The imagination-driven version. We're not going to be talking necessarily about the video game part of it today, right? Because there are video games. I've seen you play them.
There are. There's quite a few. There's a few that I play. Most people know like Baldur's Gate's a pretty big one. There's a specific one based on the Dungeons and Dragons version that I play, which is Pathfinder. They have a game specifically made for that. And then Divinity Original Sin and Original Sin 2 were also some games that they did based around that. But all of the experience that we're going to be talking about, that I'm going to be talking about, are the tabletop versions. So it's going to be your your third edition sets, your fifth editions, Pathfinder 1 and 2. Stuff like that, stuff that you can do just kind of, late at night, no internet needed, just messing around, having a good old time.
Absolutely. So how did you get involved in D&D? What was that like?
It's kind of a long story. I hadn't really heard about it until a friend of mine messaged me on Facebook and was like, hey, we're running this D&D campaign. Are you interested? And I wanted to try something new at the time. I wanted to see what D&D was about because I'd heard about it, going through school and growing up. So I gave it a shot. I was a little nervous at first, as any new player will be. But I got in, they showed me the ropes and had a good old time. The DM for that session and that campaign was really, really good at it. So it kind of drew us in. We played that for at least a couple of years. And then we just ended that about a couple of years ago. And they kind of finished that campaign up. So I haven't played that one for a little while.
Sounds like that was a long campaign.
It was. So when it comes to these campaigns, there's two different versions you can go with. You've got the one shots, which are just like the one sessions. And then you have your campaigns, which can last anywhere between like a couple weeks up to like many years. And I know a few people that I went to school with and have gone to work with that are still doing campaigns like 5-6 years later.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I played like 3 times when I was in high school, which if y'all can't tell was a long time ago. We were on a bus or a van on the way to my brother's fencing tournaments. And I was trained in how to call fencing matches. And so I would be on these things with them and they're like, just join us, just join us. And so those are my experiences playing D&D, and it was pretty informal. Even the pages we had, like we didn't have pages. Someone had a book. So we were kind of like making up characters and trying to remember their stats because pre-digital. So it was one of those things. I don't have a lot of experience. Kind of got dragged into it by friends myself too. Definitely. So what would someone these days need to get started? Probably more than a book in the back of a van somewhere, heading through rural Canada to the next city.
Really, to get started, all you really need to do is just kind of know somebody. There's always one person, within the friend group that's going to like move you into that sphere. Or, it's like you'll just pick up a general interest. Like you'll see a video somewhere. It's like, oh, that looks like a lot of fun. How do I get started with that? With the internet and everything like that, like back in the old days, where it wasn't quite common to play online, you would really have to know somebody who had all the materials to be able to go out and get these things going. But there's places on like Paizo, which is the kind of the home of Pathfinder. They do events every single year. Not really this year. They did one online. But they have events you can go to where you can just hook up with a bunch of people, play, and then it'll all like link up with everybody else. But a lot of the just resources you can get is all online based. And there's quite a majority of it that is free. But a lot of the original source material you do have to pay for. But, like I said, if you know somebody, they can usually get you those materials.
Right. So source materials, are you talking character sheets? Are you talking campaigns? How's that?
It's pretty loose. So whenever source materials go, there's quite a few different options. So you've got your core rule book, which is the base of everything. It tells you what to do, how to build your character. Character sheets are those are ones that are typically free. You can get those anywhere. But you can do like map designs. You can get pre-made campaigns, which are called scenarios or adventures. There's a lot of those that they give out, but you can also create your own. You're not really limited to just the pre-made sets. So that's kind of a nice thing about Dungeons and Dragons is that if you don't like the way something is, you can just go off and go make one yourself. Like if you know how to do it and the base, like just how it works. Basically, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. All right. What about the cool things you might want to get?
Cool things.
Some pictures. How about these? You got a handful of those by you? Those are the dice.
I do have them specifically out for this occasion. But the set of dice that are on the screen now for everybody, these are my personal dice. I only show 3 of them, but I do have more. These 3 sets are my most prized possessions. They're just differently designed, but they're all the same. They all roll the same, but they're just, they're pretty. They look really cool. You don't have to have like, a white set or you can mix and match, this is like kind of the prize possession everyone has. Like they always have some sort of like really cool set, or they have like a really cool, thing that they roll their dice in. It's kind of the centerpiece for a lot of people. And I know I have a few people that I've played with that have a lot more than I do. I think I've got about maybe 8 or 9 sets of dice.
So in chat, they're recognizing one of the sets. Chessex Borealis?
Chessex Borealis, that is one of my favorites. That was actually my first set of D&D dice. That is a 7 set of polyhedral dice from a D4 all the way up to a D20. And the reason I got those was because I wanted a kind of a spacey themed like nebula set. And then those ones kind of matched the bill. I got those for about like $5 off of eBay.
Is that the set that you might describe as kind of clear?
It's kind of clear. It's those purple ones with kind of that gold inlay. And then I've got one that's a bit more dynamic in their coloring. There's more blue and purple, and the numbers are more a kind of a gold. Those ones cost me a bit more, and those were handmade, and those are my absolute favorites that I own.
I feel like if chat has some of their favorites, they should be telling us about them now too, because I think there's people here who play D&D and probably like to talk about. So a standard set includes what? Or a
standard set includes a total of 7 dice. The lowest is going to be a D4. It's a triangle die. It goes from a D4, a D6. I believe there's a D8 in there, a D10, and then they've got a few more. There's one that's a kind of a damage counter. It's the same as a D10, but it goes in terms of 10. So instead of it being a 1, it'd be a 10 all the way up to 100. We use those ones for specific scenarios. And then it goes all the way up to a D20, which is the main dice that we use for everything. And that's kind of more of that star-ish type die.
Yes. The numbers correspond to the number of sides and the dice have. Yes. I did learn this the hard way. Do you have any of those big crazy ones?
I do not have any large crazy dice yet.
Okay.
I say yet. We'll see. I do have a crazy one that I did order. There's some sets you can get that are specially made that they have liquid like kind of in the middle. And whenever you roll them, they swirl and it's kind of like a nice little magic kind of SNC type deal.
Yes. And you don't think they're loaded?
It depends. Most of them, they tell you that they're weighted and that they should work like as intended. But if I have any questions, I'll just use my regular set. So there's no issues there.
I get that. I was just kind of, yeah. So I've seen tons of these around. I mean, this is the thing that people would bring them out and they'd be like all this. And I'm talking about a very long time ago when D&D probably was fairly new. I'm thinking it was kind of started in the 80s, didn't it? So I'm talking about the early 90s here. So, and people were already like, ooh, look at this die. I knew someone who had like a 66-sided, I think.
There's a lot. There's a lot after D20, but you don't really use those very often, especially in the base set. It's more of a novelty factor than anything of use.
I would think.
At least as far as I've seen. I could be completely wrong on that fact.
I think that's very much the case. Very much the case. We'll leave that for now.
Sounds good.
All right. So, I found someone who's willing to play with me. Kaj is going to lead me. I'm brand new. You need to get me a set of dice. Any advice, chat? That's a good question. And actually from you too, Kaj. Any advice?
So my advice for your first set, don't worry about pricing. Go off the look. As long as you have a full set of 7, you can make that work for pretty much anything. It's more of just a centerpiece of just something that you can go with that makes you. You can make a theme set. Like I know people have a mix and match set of dice that like they have one for their healing, which is like a red or a blue, which kind of is like a mana potion or a health potion. So that way it kind of ties in with what they have. It's really a matter of how you want your set to look. Like with me, I like spacey, shiny, glittery things. So that's what I buy, and that works best for me.
So I could probably find me a green and orange set somewhere.
Yeah. Another thing is that like where to get them? You can get them from anywhere, like Amazon, eBay's where I get a few of mine for really cheap. Comic shops, card shops, places like those will sell like just grab bags full you can pick out from. And then there's places like, Kickstarter where some companies they'll have Kickstarters up for like really expensive dice that look really well. And I have a couple sets from them that I got from those. And they're one of my favorites, but they are, like I said, pretty pricey. So it just whatever fits your budget.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the pricey ones don't give you better rolls?
No, they don't. They just look better. It's more of a like my metal set. I'm never gonna use, but they just look cool.
Mm-hmm. You were telling me they were kind of damaging, right?
They're very heavy and they're very sharp. So if you're gonna roll them, you're gonna want to roll them on something that's gonna protect your table, or else you're gonna have some pockmarks in that bad boy.
D&D damages furniture, folks.
Another reason to give your mom to tell you to not play the game.
Oh,
You don't want to damage my furniture.
your furniture. Explain that to your roommates. What on earth happens? Okay, so I'm ready to go. Maybe I've got my dice. Maybe I'm going to use Roll20 instead.
Right.
Does that work?
So Roll20 is a perfect example. Roll20, for those that are unaware, is a online tabletop kind of browser game that you can go off of. It's completely free. In fact, it's what I'm hosting my show on. It has a dice roller embedded in the actual browser, so you can just use a command. You can roll the desired dice. In fact, on some of the character sheets, it rolls them for you. All you have to do is click a button, and it'll do all the calculations for you.
That's fantastic. I didn't tell you the whole truth about what I've done because I am involved in a tabletop RPG on a stream, and I've been there twice in 2 years. So, I mean, that tells you my involvement. But the nice thing about a Star Wars RPG is I can just be away on Rebel business when I'm not there. And when we do use it. And it's even a little more complex because we might have to roll 2d6 as opposed to, because it's a game that was set up with just your 6-sided die, right? So
right,
it's been set up
back
that
when
way.
they didn't have all that fancy multiple sided dice other than the standard d6.
Yeah. So it's a very vintage thing. So yeah, we have been using that. But with your fancy die, when you roll a 2, you still look good while you fail. Right?
That is true.
The one
Get a
looks
little
much
bit of
prettier.
flair with that crit fumble of yours.
There we go. I love the language. Laz has a gash in his table leg because of an oversized D20.
I can admire that kind of war crime, or not war crime, but war damage.
So for those of you who have favorite dice, I feel like we need pictures. We either need them in our Discord, under pictures, or we need them in on the website for sure. Hi Tycho, how you doing?
I'd love to judge some of these dice decision making skills that others have chosen. Besides, dice collecting is a big issue.
Yes.
Once you get one set, you can never stop, and you buy as many as you ended up. You'll wake up one day and you have like 6 new sets on your doorstep.
Yes. You know what? That's why, we spent a little bit of time on it, but I do know that people love it. Okay. So now we get to the fun stuff, right? We get to create a character. So what does one need to keep in mind? What are some common character types, I guess? Like,
are you asking race wise or
sure.
class wise?
Start with one and let's go to the other.
Yeah. So what a lot of people end up going with in base sets of D&D, you have a specific set of core, what they call them as core races and core classes. Core races are going to be your standard races like human. You've got orc. You've got elven. Then you have some other ones like halfling gnomes or halfling and gnomes. And then you have like subcategories, like you have your half elves, half orcs, and some other half ones if you decide to choose those. But the ones I see most of are going to be like humans and elves. Those are the pretty common ones.
That happened to you on the OmniPixel stream run, isn't it?
We had a few elves get chosen. I think everyone except for one person ended up being an elf. And then a few decided to change after they heard that. So really what most people choose from is just how you choose to build your character and kind of what, buffs and what abilities you get from being that specific race. But for the most part, it's more or less what you want to do as your character. Like, who do you want to be? What I suggest is, if you want to be a ranger, go be a ranger, just test it out. If you don't like it, choose another one next time. You're not limited to just, that one and then you're stuck with it.
Do races and classes have like parity? Like, are there some races that don't exist or some classes that don't exist in some races and do in others?
Like you mean in different or different D&D versions? Is that what you're asking?
Or even in D&D, like I'm imagining, are all the races represented in all the different classes? So I'm thinking about your human mage and
It really depends. Some versions of Dungeons and Dragons and Pathfinder not so much, but I have seen it in Dungeons and Dragons where some races were only allowed to be specific classes. But whenever those get brought up, most DMs are going to be a little bit more loose about it. It's not like a required thing, which is kind of the joy of being a DM is you get to make the game how you want to play it. You're not really tied to a specific set of rules. Like you have to do this, you have to do that. You can be a bit more relaxed, or you can be more strict about certain rules.
Right. So when I develop my character, how might that impact my gameplay?
What do you mean? Like when it comes to like how you finish your making character and how it's going to be incorporated into the gameplay, or
so if I'm just assuming, and remember two experiences before you were born, that if I am an orc ranger, that's looking at what I'm able to do is going to look very different than if I'm an elven mage. Like it's going to affect my play.
It really comes down to the classes and how you play. You have a specific set of abilities and like attacks and a specific range of motion you can do. So like when it comes to the different races, they're all pretty similar. They just have a different set of like feats they can get, which is just basically like things that they're allowed. Like certain feats, like for elves, they might have a better hearing range, or they might be able to see differently in dark and light and dim places than other races, or they might have an advantage in certain scenery, like for example a wood elf, which is a kind of a background you can get in Pathfinder. They're going to have a better advantage in like foresty areas than let's say a human from the city,
right?
And then that's just kind of like what I said about just choosing a character you want to play, because it's just, something that you want to do. Some classes are going to be harder than others, and some races are going to be harder to portray than others. It's all about comfort zone and what you want to do. It's pretty loose.
Yes. So we've got some D&D players in chat. I can see that. You guys, what are some of your favorite characters? Tell us a little bit about them, because I'm going to ask Kaj a little bit about his too. And I think Tycho's telling us about an epic fail. I think
then I see that Sleepy did say something about any race can be any class in D&D. That is very, very, very true, unless it's like a homebrew where the DM has decided not to allow specific races to be certain ones. But yeah. I
love the term homebrew in terms of this. I'm Canadian. That is not what homebrew means.
My definition of homebrew is like you're making your own concoction and you're tossing it all together the way you want it to be.
Oh, I love it. I just, yeah. So tell us about some of your favorite characters that you've played or played again or played with.
My favorite character that I ever played was my first character. Which was, it's a standard one. Everyone chooses this one. It was a half-orc barbarian. He was kind of, played not so smart. And then, by the end, he was like, all right, this guy's more genius. But it was really fun to kind of go around and just, brute force everything. And then just, you see something, you go and whack it. It's it's that mindless, just you get that destruction and, that meaty barbarian vibe as you go through. That's one of my favorites.
I feel like those are the characters throw a wrench into things too. Would you just squish the dragon egg we're supposed to be rescuing? I don't know.
Ones that that kind of throw the party awry and then kind of just ruin a bunch of stuff. But my if I had a second favorite character, I did have another character I played with. They were if I remember correctly, they were a goblin, I believe. But their main thing was that they were a food hoarder. So they would just carry this sack of food with them all over the place. And it wasn't cleaned out all the time. This might sound gross for those who don't know. But if you don't want to hear this next part, close your ears because it is pretty gross. It's not that bad, but the food would spoil after a little while. And then whenever the bag gets dropped on the floor or gets dumped or whatever, things around it would just take poison damage because it's just rotten food everywhere. And I think that was my favorite thing because they would just go back up to that bag and just start scooping it back in the bag and putting more things in it. And that was the funniest thing I've ever had. So that would be my second favorite out of the bunch that I've done.
That is fantastic. So people are talking about, I'm just going to look at this because I think it's fun. I'm always so fascinated when people talk about their characters. Laz was talking about a human named Tasha. And we're just going to leave it at that.
I'd also like to reiterate for everybody, I'm not a seasoned DM. I'm fairly new. So there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And a lot of stuff that I'm still learning. But it's definitely one of those things where you're always going to be learning something. So I'm glad I'm seeing a lot of things coming through here because it's teaching me something that I didn't know before. So I'm really appreciating everyone's input on this. It's really fun to talk about and kind of see where everybody comes from and what they've experienced. It's really, really nice to see.
Laz like smarty pants spellcasters. Tycho, a dwarf ranger, been through so much, and I don't even know Tiefling? Paladin?
Tiefling.
Mm-hmm. That is not something I've heard before.
Tiefling's a more recent race that I've come accustomed to. I can't remember where I saw it last. It might have been in Baldur's Gate, but I haven't actually played with one in a D&D session yet. But they seem to be pretty cool. I'd also like to input on that Smarty Pants spellcasters. I did have another character. For those who don't know, there's a class called Skald, and I think 5th, one of the D&D versions. I was a gnome Skald. Very fun. He was a Smarty Pants know-it-all and would just correct everybody on pretty much everything. So it's nice to kind of play that kind of a role every once in a while because you kind of get out of your normal personality type and kind of experience. I wouldn't say that.
Burrito had a Minotaur Tempest Domain Cleric.
Oh, those ones are pretty cool.
And kind of developed after his WoW character, it sounds like.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Half elf.
I know this might come up at some point, but some people allow multi-classing in D&D. I don't know if they still do, but a while ago this came up and we had a couple of people doing it in one of my homebrews. But some people choose to do 2 different classes. That's really complicated, so I steer away from it. So that's about all my input on that part of the topic.
Yeah. I love this. These people. Multiclassing is definitely a thing.
Definitely still a thing in 5th. I thought so. A lot of people love to multi-class. It's not for me. That's a lot of work. And just trying to keep together one character sheet with one class can be a lot for some people, especially if you're a more complex class like any of the spellcasters, because you have so much to keep track of. Because you got to keep track of your spells, how many you have per day, all your cantrips, how many you've used. It's a lot, and I'm going to stick with my basic barbarian because those are my homies. I gotta say,
peeps, eh?
My peeps.
Yes, excellent. Doom, we're talking about our favorite characters, just so you know. D&D Beyond is supposed to make it easier.
I have seen, and I have been looking at D&D Beyond because I do plan on using that at some point to kind of get into it because there's a lot of really cool adventures and scenarios built into it. But from what I have seen, it has simplified a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to the newer versions of D&D. So I'm really glad to see that they're taking that approach. So that way more people can get into it because, you look at it, all this extra information and you're just like, all right, this is too much. I'm not going to play because it's overwhelming.
And it's a lot to keep track of, I'm imagining, in gameplay. Like, it disrupts at some point. In my mind, it would take a lot, right, to, stop and start looking, and a little bit less natural to do.
Yeah, if you're not that experienced, it could take you a little bit to kind of figure out where things are, and it might disrupt the flow of the session, and it just can make people get, irritated or bored because, things are taking too long, or it can make a session drag on from, something that could be like an hour to somewhere between like 5 hours because, people are just not really familiar with stuff like that. So it's really nice to see that they're finally taking the step towards that.
Now, I have been around Twitch long enough to know that people sometimes love their characters, and sometimes there's custom art and those kind of things made about them. I think if people have them right now, they should definitely be posting them again, either in socials and tagging us, or in on our website or on our Discord. We will look at them all, I promise, after, for sure, not during stream. But when I was asking Kaj about it, he's like, oh, I don't know that I really have anything. And then we talked longer, and he's like, actually, I have this little fella. So tell us about this fella.
So that is of my very first character, my orc barbarian that I had. This is a war. I can't remember if it's Warhammer, but it's a minifigure I got from Games Workshop for about $25 that I had custom painted by one of my best friends that I've had, especially for D&D. He's the one that got me into it. And he's like, hey, you buy this figure, I'll go ahead and I'll paint it like your first character. This is right at the end of our first campaign. So he's like, all right, tell me what you want him to look like, and I'll ship it to you for Christmas. So he sent this to me. It's very, very tiny. It's, it's about, I would say, maybe a little bit smaller than a baseball, but I can bring it up here.
You're not going to see the detail like you do. See little.
You won't see the detail, but you can kind of see the size of it. It's very, very tiny, but it kind of gives you a bit of an appreciation, especially for those who do minifig painting as a hobby, because there's a lot of very intricate detail work that goes into it, and there's lots of hours, blending the paints in there, trying to get that shade that you want and getting that detail in there that you want.
That's a lot of tiny detail. I wasn't expecting when you showed me the size. I was based on the photo. I wasn't expecting that. They're loving it. It's
one of my favorites. Now, I do have a bunch more, but they're completely non-painted. They're just gray. But there are like sets you can buy for minifigures that you can paint yourself, and they come with little paints. But it's definitely one of the more expensive sides of the hobby. So I'd rather stick with pre-made colors than doing it myself.
I know streamers
Too much money involved.
Who have commissioned artwork, and I know streamers who do commissioned artwork of D&D characters. I have seen this before. That's why 3D printers are amazing inventions. That would be really, if anyone has any of that stuff, make sure you're posting it somewhere we can see it. I promise you we'll really enjoy it. I love people's imaginations and how they approach their character, and how they kind of, for those who don't know, sorry, tree frog time. I have aphantasia. Aphantasia is a kind of a brain difference. It's fairly new. It wasn't identified until 2015, although I knew before that my brain worked different. I don't visualize anything. So as you're telling me about your character, I don't have a picture in my head. I can't put one together. Even if I know what an orc is, I really can't see it. So something like this, I always find them fascinating that people have that kind of relationship, that they can see it, and B, that they're willing to put the time into it to have something like that made. So I love that. You just got to make friends with people with 3D printers. Eden knows where it's at.
And they're also getting more and more inexpensive as time goes on. So, but I think the hardest part with that is going to be, just trying to find a design that works best for you, or just something that works, to what you need them to. But it's definitely not a requirement, especially if you're just looking to play. You don't have to have these material things, but they're still nice to have.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the, yes, most hobbies have that, what you need to play the game, and then what's fun to have. whether it's sports and you want the jersey, or whether it's painting and you want that really fancy color that you don't need, or
going to a concert, buying that concert T-shirt you don't need, even though you really, really want it.
It doesn't make them any cool, any less cool, just because you don't need it. Yeah,
it's a piece of memory. It sticks with you for a while. With that, I can look at that and be like, hey, that's my first ever character I've ever had. That's pretty darn cool.
Dice towers, yes. Eden, if you want to put some of those pictures either in the website or in Discord, definitely do it. I can't wait to see what y'all have. It's one of my favorite parts about talking to D&D people.
Dice towers are definitely one of the coolest things I've ever seen. There's so many different creations that I've seen, especially in 3D printing. Oh boy, but they're definitely out of the price range. But they're pretty cool, especially if you want a more random approach to your rolling instead of just, the normal way.
Okay, what's a dice tower?
So what a dice tower is it's a, like it suggests in the name, it's a tower, but it's got a series of like loops on the inside, kind of like a spiral staircase, or it's got a different design in there. It just basically just rolls the die for you. Just, in your own way. You don't have to do it by hand. You can just toss in there and it's, it's fun. Mm-hmm. Well, not as random as some people might not think they're as random as they seem to be, but they're fun. So that's my take on it. They're fun. Absolutely.
I think you'd have to put a lot of work in to make it not random. It'd take a lot of effort.
It depends on your definition of random.
Yes, that's very true. I love this conversation about different races in the chat. We decided that we were talking about a kangaroo.
There's definitely a lot that you can, if you can think of the race that you might want to be. Like we've got rat folk in there. I don't remember their name right now, but there's just anything you can think of. There's probably a race.
I'll give 5 points to anyone to chat that can tell me if there's a frog race.
There probably is one.
I will give you 5 points. I don't know what 5 points will get you. Nothing except for, my admiration, but we can do it.
You get one sip of coffee and then one single M&M.
Look at Laz and Burrito both got it.
Grung. Very nice. Very nice.
Fantastic.
But yeah, even if there isn't a race form, you can just create your own, which is definitely one of the topics that people can get into. Is, like you were saying earlier, you have a Star Wars campaign that you were doing. Yeah. Like, if you know how the game works, you can just make a thing that you want to do, It's definitely one of those, the limit is your imagination kind of games.
Yes. And that one in particular, it is I made up a random race, and there's rules on how you make your character, but there isn't really subcategories to know about unless you're going to play Force user. So it's just one of those things where it's pretty freeform. So I am literally playing a little old green character. I was like, I call them all youngins all the time.
That's funny.
An old senator, So when did you start DMing? And is that what you call it? Because you've called it something else.
It depends on the version. So in 5th edition and a few other editions, DMing as just Dungeon Master is just the key term for it. But in the version that I'm running right now, which is Pathfinder 2nd edition, they're called Game Masters instead. It's the same thing, just under a different name. You can do it. You can say it's GMing or DMing. It just depends on what they're using for the campaign or whatever. But they're all the same thing. It's just the world builder. Whoever's just setting up the scenes. Making the session flow. Mm-hmm. That's pretty much all it is.
Dungeon Master is technically a licensed term. That's why.
Licensed term, yeah.
That is funny. Good luck with that. I always think DMT
that one I did not know. That is definitely one that I did not know, but they all mean the same thing. You can call it whatever you want.
Absolutely. All right. So what got you into that? Where'd you?
So I got into this at the beginning of this year. I just recently restarted back up after a few month break. But we had a kind of an invite from one of my friends, of whom was the original DM of my first campaign. He's like, "Hey, I have a bunch of sessions that I need help running. It's going to be a kind of a bi-weekly, we're going to be running like 3 different groups through the same set of scenarios. We need an extra DM. Are you interested? They're all set up. We can teach you how." And I was like, okay, sure. And then I did a really small one that was like about an hour, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it a lot, and my party had a lot of fun. And I was like, okay, this might be something for me. I like being able to set up, everything, make sure everyone's, doing what they're supposed to do. And then, also the mischievous side of things is also a lot of fun, especially when you're wanting to kind of mess with your players a bit. If they're being a little rowdy, you can kind of make their day a little worse.
Yeah. Eden, that is actually really the case. I used to see tons of those bags kicking around with dice in them throughout university and stuff. You're all velvet.
That one I did know.
Yeah, we used to see that. So what kind of skills do you think you need to be a DM?
That's a good question. I definitely do not have a lot of these. But you need to know, like, anybody can DM, but there's a lot it takes to be a good DM. You need to have a lot of confidence in kind of your actions. You need to know how to just story tell really well. But those can be learned with time. Like, anybody can start, I'm still learning. It's more or less just confidence and being able to portray the, scenarios to the best of your abilities towards your players. But the biggest thing is just making sure that they have fun. So
if you can't dazzle them with your ability, you can baffle them with bullshit.
I mean, in some cases, yes. I wouldn't put it that way, but that works.
It's an old saying. Throwing curveballs at players sounds fun. Tycho knows what kind of DM he wants to be.
My favorite thing to do as a DM is definitely throwing curveballs at people.
Okay.
In fact, sorry.
No, go.
Oh, in fact, my first session that we did, the one that we aired, well, not really the first, it was our first actual session, which is the one that aired on What's My Role, the D&D show that I'm doing. We had one of my players, Carver. He didn't really do anything. I was just like, all right, well, we're just going to have him. This is just what's going to happen to him. So I kind of had him get pulled underwater and into the belly of a ship just because I could. And, it kind of made for an interesting aspect and interesting situation for the rest of the party.
Mm-hmm. So is some of that to create interest and to create kind of like a problem now we have to solve? Is that...
It's a kind of a thing to kind of throw them off guard, to kind of get their like, oh, that's a thing that can happen. Or like, hey, this is a situation that just arose. We need to figure out how we can deal with this. Or like just to kind of like, if they're feeling a little bit cocky, kind of bring that back down. I was like, okay, we need to be back on our guard. We can't just, go willy-nilly and just do what we want. We have to kind of think about this.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, when you think about good storytelling, there's obstacles that you have to overcome. And so otherwise you're just, wandering around slaying bad guys and drinking ale. I don't know. It's something that has to happen. Are there different styles of DMing?
I would say yes. Especially for myself, I'm pretty loose right now because I haven't really found my groove when it comes to DMing just yet. Mm-hmm. But everyone has their own way of doing it. They have their own specific set. Like, some people are like the book DMers who will just go with what the book says. Some people are going to be more relaxed. But, the cool thing about all that is, just doing whatever is comfortable for you and whatever works for the session and the campaign. So when it comes to styles, there's really an unlimited amount of styles you can go with. It's all about the role play when it comes to that. And I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Just make it fun. If people have a good old time, that's a win in my book. I did my job for the day.
Yeah. What are some challenges? What do you run into out there, Kaj?
My biggest challenge is definitely confidence in DMing, because sometimes you'll come across a spot in a scenario. It's like, okay, how do I go about getting this out to my party? How can I tell them what's going on in a way that's going to make everybody understand? And that's especially harder when it comes to new players who haven't played the game and don't really know how to go in terms of like the direction of what they need to go do. Sometimes you have to hint a bit more and kind of prod them in the right direction, especially if they're taking a long time trying to figure out what's happening. And that's kind of a anxiety-inducing situations, because what did I miss out? What am I not portraying properly? And it's definitely one of the things that you have to work on as much as you can, and that's what I'm dealing with. Those are the main things that I have issues with. But the other thing is keeping control of your party, because when it comes to RP role-playing based games, they're going to go off the wall and they're just going to keep going on like some subject. And you're like, okay, well, we've been doing this for 12 minutes. Let's bring it back to the situation and we'll continue from there. But you also don't want to stop them from role playing, because that's the best part of the game.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I think what we'll do here is we'll take a quick break. When we come back, we want to talk about some past campaigns. We want to hear from you guys, some of your best moves, epic fails. We want to hear a little bit of that from Kaj. And we're going to talk a little bit about What's My Role, because Kaj is streaming his most recent campaign here on the OmniPixel channel. So we'll be back in like 5 minutes, folks, and you'll get to hear some of the shows. And if you need to start typing what some of your best fails or best campaigns are, definitely start typing now, folks. All right. Some of the campaigns that you've had. First of all, let's talk a little bit about campaigns in general. I know people are starting to put some of theirs, so I'm going to have to go back and look at some of them. But how do you choose a campaign? What do you do?
That's a good question. So as a player, it's really kind of loose. Like for me personally, it's like, all right, well, whatever the DM chooses, I'll go with it, as long as it's fun. But as a DM choosing a campaign, it's really, I choose one specific scenario that I do. And if they don't like it, I won't continue with it. Especially if it's like a longer set of scenarios. I'll just choose, a basic setting, one that's easy to follow. It's not too hard to get into. There's not a whole lot going on in the world. So this current set, I'm running the Pathfinder Society set of scenarios, which is a kind of a pre-made set created by Paizo, the folks over at Paizo that do the Pathfinder set. They're all kind of pre-made, but they're all generalized and very easy to follow. So I do those ones to kind of get everybody into it, and then I'll go on to something more, my own. But I'll just kind of keep it to 1 or 2 sessions. That way they can kind of get a feel. If they aren't really liking the direction, I'll go ahead and choose something else.
All right. So have you done some custom campaigns?
As a DM, no. As a player, I've done a couple. Mm-hmm. The first one, which is the one I'm always going to refer back to because that's my most longest running campaign that I've done. And then there was one other one, which is a little bit blurry. I didn't really participate as much in that one because I was working a lot more at the time. Right.
So they range. One shot is literally one session, or can it be kind of short?
One shots are typically one session. But if it's the same kind of I don't know, I would say a session is just from beginning to end. sometimes it could take multiple days to get us one of those sessions out. But one shots are typically just a one and done kind of a thing. Like, we're going to go in a dungeon, we're going to get some loot, and then we're going to go back out, and then that's it.
And it could be also years, it sounds like.
For a normal campaign, yes, those ones will take a lot more. Like the first one that I did, we did it every single Sunday, and we did that for almost 2 years. And then we finished it off, and then they did their next season in the same world, and then they did that one, but they did that one without me because I just got busy, so I couldn't participate as often as I wanted to.
Right. So let's talk highlights and lowlights, and sometimes I think those kind of combine. We are going to talk to chat a little bit about theirs too. So maybe we'll hit a few of them that have already gone in chat, and then I'm going to ask you for some of yours, just because I like this stuff. So Taiko had a recent fail in a one shot with a paladin. They had 2 attacks with their character and rolled 2 natural ones. 2 natural ones back to back, I'm assuming. Oy. What did that do to your character? Did you end up in the belly of a ship underwater? I mean, things could happen. And then Eden, one of the people I was playing with rolled a paladin. We were running through the forest being chased by the BBEG. While there was a thunderstorm and rain, it started to flood, and the paladin thinks it's a good idea to climb a tree in full plate metal.
That's a pretty good one.
You don't even have to say anymore, Eden. We know what happened.
We know what went down.
We know what happened. So tell us about some of your stories, Kosh.
Do you want to hear the more exciting ones, or do you want to hear an embarrassing one first? Because there's more embarrassing ones than there is actual like triumphant stories in this case.
Oh, well, let's start with the embarrassing ones. I mean, come on.
So the most notable one that I had, so being a barbarian, you're typically going to be intimidating, and you're going to try to scare as many people or intimidate them as much as possible because you're a big bad, muscular dude that looks scary. What happens when you roll a 1 when you do those checks for intimidating somebody is you're kind of the opposite of intimidating, and you're more alluring. So imagine
so you're flirting.
Imagine this hunky, big, 6'3" half orc that's trying to, scare a pack of wolves. Naturally hits a 1 and ends up seducing the pack. So instead of them, running away, you've got a bunch of them, following you around and attacking. I'm not going to go too much into detail with that one. But yeah, that's one of my more embarrassing moments, is getting seduced by a pack of wolves because I failed an intimidation check. That one's a pretty good one. I think we all can relate to a situation like that. But another thing I'd like to note, there was in D&D you have like treasures you can find that you can sell for gold. This one is another one that I did. Trying to pull it, it's kind of stuck in in a skeleton hand, like in some catacomb that we were investigating. And you're trying to pull it out of the wall. It's kind of stuck in there. And you have to roll like kind of a specific check for that. In this case, it was just like a strength check because you're trying to like tug on it, trying to get it free. You crit fumble it, and it just kind of you break it, and now your party's out a bunch of gold. So you kind of get beat up on by the rest of the party for losing money.
That is not where this emote came from, right?
Is it the mimic?
No. Damn it, Kosh.
Or the Damica. That one's more of an inside joke within the community. So that one's a bit I don't know how it started. You'll have to ask the more veterans of the community where that came from, because it just happened one day. but it's definitely one you can use if any of that stuff happens again.
Mm-hmm.
So little hint for those that you can spam it all you like, because it happens often with me. You'll know if you hang around with me a lot, but yeah.
Laz, is that how Tasha died? Decided to ingest mystery juice. Note to our viewers. It is generally a wise thing to avoid ingesting mystery juice. It's just like one of those rules, kind of. It's just called a rule across the whole community. No mystery juice.
No mystery juice, even if it does look delicious. I'm sorry, but don't accept mystery juice whenever your party's in peril.
Mm-hmm. Now, does anyone have any really fantastic saves?
Oh, I have a really good one. We'll let them kind of formulate. So while they're doing that, I'll go ahead and talk about that real quick, if that's okay.
Yeah. Epic saves. There's usually at least one or two.
I had a couple. So we were going through a scenario, and at the very end, we were facing a large ogre, which is kind of like an orc, but not really. It's just they're bigger and just meaner, but just the general idea aspect of it and kind of what they look like. Well, I rolled dead last for our initiative rolls, which for initiative is just your turn order. Who goes first in the combat phase. I'm dead last. The party's struggling very, very heavily. And, you're kind of the last person there. So they're looking like, hey, come help us. We're struggling here. And then, managed to hit 2 crits back to back, which crits are not crit fumbles. They're more, they're the opposite end. So they're the critical successes. So I hit 2 of those right off in a row, did max damage on a couple of them, and then ended up one wiping the boss. And then the whole party is just sitting there all stunned. Because for those who've played with me, my rolls are very, very poor when it comes to anything character-wise. Oh. I usually roll pretty low on that scale.
You do not have that luck, huh?
I do not have a touch. I have no touch when it comes to rolling dice.
I hear that. I once heard a story, and I think actually Buck Time might have been involved in this one, about someone who tried to take cover, but there was no real cover to take, and it was a big one. And so they're like, well, roll for it. I mean, and I don't know what they had to get, but they rolled a natural 20. So they took cover in a smooth hallway almost. It's just
that's what I love the most about it. I think my favorite thing to say as a DM is when everybody makes a sneak roll and then they roll. And my favorite thing to say is, you think you're hidden, which they think they're hidden. But depending on what the roll is, they're not hidden or they are hidden. So It just really depends on what happens, especially if they crit fumble it, which is just a natural 1. It's fun to say because they're like, oh, well, I'm hidden. You guys can't see me, but they're standing out in the middle of a field, waving their arms around.
Right. I was just playing hide and seek with my nephew this weekend, and he did the whole quilt behind the couch thing where you can see the quilt wiggling.
Right.
Kind of like that.
Classic move.
So, Guru, I would say if you want to know, we did talk a little bit about how to get involved at the beginning, but also if you want to join the website, we can always kind of continue the conversation there, right, Kaj? About how to get involved in D&D when the world gets back to normal and how to find a community. Because he did bring up some resources, so we'll share them in our website. If someone can pull up the website, that would be great. Eden once saved a diplomat from assassination by pinning the assassin's wrist to his back with an arrow while it was snowing heavily from 60 yards away. That was an awesome roll, Eden.
That's pretty cool.
And that is.
I did once trick a god to giving me demigod status one time.
You did. And what did demigod status give you?
I wasn't, but everyone thought I was. So playing a level of deception for the rest of the campaign was definitely a lot of fun. because NPCs would just direct you differently that way. But you're just some regular dude prancing around like you've got god powers, even though you don't. It's a lot of fun, but you can get pretty nasty with your trickery. I love it bits.
Yes. And then last is another story about Tasha as a win. Saved the party by jumping off a cliff above water in order to get in range of the enemy spellcaster that casted something that could potentially kill several party members. She cast Counterspell, which canceled the evildoer's spell. In the next round, she managed to save herself with another spell, only almost dying. That is fantastic.
I'm apparently Loki. You don't know that, and I'm not going to say that I am not. Or I am. It is a mystery.
It is a mystery.
Damn it, gosh. Yeah, that's fair. That's
we
fair.
heard him talking about messing with characters too when he was DMing. So
that one can be fun, especially a trick I like to use. Whenever in a combat situation, combat initiative like point of the campaign, if I have anybody that's like kind of lingering back and they're not really doing a whole lot, I like to focus on them a lot, especially if they're squishy. Squishy in terms of like they've got low health or they've got a low like roll to hit number, which is just AC for those of that I've played. Just to scramble the party up a bit more and kind of get them frantic about trying to save their precious healer who can only take so much. And they're pretty, soft.
I'm glad you explained squishy, because I thought maybe you're referring to people like me.
No, or me. No, squishy in terms of they're just soft. They don't really have a lot of rigidity in terms of like being able to take hits. Which is usually just in the case of like how much HP they have or how much it takes to actually get a hit on them. So it really depends, but I like to focus on them every once in a while. Just to kind of get them involved a bit more. And I also like hearing their reactions, because some people are just like, I don't know if this is the right term, but like befuddled, I think is a good term. Kind of like, they're like, why am I getting attacked? What's going on? And, it's just,
You're getting
some people have priceless reactions.
That's what we decided.
So, hey, this is Cameron. So DB Cameron here is one of my fellow party mates. He feels targeted. I may or may not have chose him a couple times during the campaign. But yeah, nobody's safe. Nobody.
Are you talking about the OmniPixel stream, the OmniPixel community?
Yes, the what is my role? That is the one I'm referring to whenever I'm talking about that one.
Let's watch. Let's check that out for a little bit. Let's check that out just for a second. Harsh realities. There's Carver. Oh, I started saying the names now. I wish I hadn't.
There's a few I haven't mentioned just yet, so everyone can kind of see what my party characters' names are.
Yeah. We didn't put in here what their roles are though, or what their races, or anything like that.
You gotta watch to find out.
Do you have your next one booked yet?
I do not. We will know at the end of this week on Friday.
What's My Role? Season 1. All right. So that is the new show that's coming up. Well, you premiered it last week, right?
I did premiere it last week. Premiered it last week on Tuesday. And it went off really, really well. The party had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I'm really, really excited for this next one. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it too much because I haven't really finished doing what I want to with it yet. But since I'm gone all next week, I'm not going to have one until, either the week after, just so we have some time, but it will definitely be before the holidays start because I know a lot of people are going to be busy during that time.
Fantastic. So you have, if I remember correctly, you have a lot of newer players, right? New to D&D in that
I
particular
do.
campaign?
I do have quite a few newer players. I can't remember how many I have off the top of my head right now. I do know I have at least one or two, definitely one that has played pretty regularly, but a lot of them are definitely new to this version of D&D, which is Pathfinder.
Right. And
all of them, I don't think I've ever played it. So they're pretty fresh.
Right. So how does that change gameplay, do you think?
It's just kind of how the character sheets are set up, what they can use in terms of their abilities, like what they're allowed. Like, there's going to be a lot of similarities between the two, but they're just going to have different, feats. They're going to have different, races involved in them, if that's even a thing anymore. It's more or less just the play style. It's like you get a game and they have different game modes. That's basically the same thing. At least that's the best way I can put it. I haven't really played a whole lot of 5th edition, so I don't know the similarities between the two. Those that have played one or the other can kind of say what the similarities are and what the similarities aren't. If that makes any sense. But it's definitely one of those things where if you've played one, you could pick up the other relatively easily. It's just what's involved in each is going to be a little different in that case.
Right. And so how do you teach? Like, you got these newbies, they made a character sheet with you, and now they're all sitting there on camera looking at you. I mean, it wasn't that awkward as making it sound, but how do you teach them to play? How do you get them involved?
A lot of trial and error.
Right.
So a lot of people, including myself, learn by experience or learn by doing. So we won't learn just by reading a textbook or reading a tutorial on how to do things, other than just going out, doing it ourselves, seeing what works and how things work. So what I generally do is I'll go over kind of the basics of how to do stuff. And then we'll have like a test session, kind of like, hey, this is kind of what you're looking forward to doing. And like, this is kind of how to play and how to use the program. It's harder to really just explain it than actually just having them do it. So that's my first line of defense, is just tossing them into a session real quick, get them, kind of show them the ropes of how to play, maybe even play a character with them. So that way they can see how you do your character and how your character does things. That's a really, really good way of doing it too.
Right. Y'all remember?
Or you can also watch other people play too. So sorry, what was that? I cut you off.
No, that's a really good point. Some of what I'm telling you all, or that I'm hearing, that I kind of understand, is from watching people stream. I stop by, say hello, listen for 10 or 20 minutes, and I kind of get the hang of what they're doing. And sometimes you hear voices. People have voices to go with their characters. This is one of my favorite things in the whole world. I have yet to, no, that is not true. In my Star Wars campaign, I was going to say I have yet to see someone dressed up, but in my Star Wars campaign, someone does indeed have a Jedi robe. So I love that kind of stuff. I think it just shows a different kind of commitment, right? Or a different.
That's the best part about it. It's like people get really into the role play. So, you'll get the voices, you'll get that energy, and the energy in the voices are what really helps make it what it is. Because, it helps you get involved. It's like you're listening to a cutscene, but you're taking a part in it instead.
Yes. Last time it has some ideas about teaching new players too, which are fantastic. Make characters together, explain different things, actually play a lot of learn by doing. Yes.
That's what I did. The first thing we did with my party, we had a session 0. We just, we did a standard, like the one we did was a pub brawl. I brought them in, we kind of started off. They were kind of learning how to really play, kind of how the stuff works, and, a lot of them kind of showed a lot of progress with that first premiere session we did. A lot of them picked it up really quickly, and a lot of them did some reading on their own too, to kind of get a better understanding, and that helped a lot with them. But I really do think that with some of them, having that first initial leap and jump into just one they can kind of just mess around where it's not like, too serious. really helped some of them kind of, get into it. And like Laz said there, I encourage people to do voices. Voices are what makes it. I'll try, but I end up going Scottish halfway through, so I end up just going regular after a while anyway, because it's hard to keep different voices together as a DM sometimes. That's one of my lesser abilities, is being able to do multiple voices. I can only do like 2, so I'll go with that way.
I sound like me 100% of the time.
Start moving around a little bit. It's kind of gotta get comfy.
Yeah, I hear that. I think that's one of the great things about D&D, Cameron, is you get to try on someone else for a while. The Scottish accent sounds fun, though. It does, except for you sound like Mike Myers, right? Like every character sounds like Mike Myers.
Every once in a while you will, unless you've got a Mike Myers based character in there, and then have at it the way you will. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you can kind of make up your own characters. Like back to what I was saying earlier, my favorite race to ever roleplay as is Skaven, which I mentioned earlier. I was trying to figure out what the name of it was, but they're rat folk. People of Vermintide will know, because the Skaven based race is in Vermintide. It's just, rat folk who run around, but they're a lot of fun to role play, because they kind of have, like, whenever they have certain conversations, some of the words they'll say are repeated at the end. And I don't know, I just find that's a lot of fun to say. Yeah, Skaven's a race in Warhammer. That's what I thought. But I do enjoy playing Skaven sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of different ways to explore the world. And I would imagine that from what I was looking at, is when you're looking at campaigns, there's storylines that you can play out, kind of the not custom ones. I want to say pre-made, but that sounds kind of harsh, but they'll always play differently depending on who's there and what they're going to do. Right. Yeah.
It's all based on the playstyle and how the DM role plays it. So you can get a bunch of different, like, the voices are all kind of what makes it kind of different in some cases, but in some scenarios there's different things that can go wrong and can happen. And it's never the same even if you run the same session, because you're going to get different outcomes on everything. So it just doesn't, I don't know what the term for it is, but it doesn't go stale as much as if you just replayed the same mission over and over and over again.
Right. Did anyone surprise you on Tuesday? Do anything where you're like,
a few of them did. A few of them started using voices, and I was like, "Ooh, that's cool. Mm-hmm. Let's get some more of those going." But I think a few of them, like, they tried to, but kind of backed off after a little while. I don't know if they felt like awkward about doing it, or if they just couldn't keep up with the voices. But I do like to see some effort when it comes to that. I definitely enjoyed hearing some of them, because I like seeing what's going on in their heads and how they want to play their character. And it kind of gives me an idea of what their character's like. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And in regards to gameplay, anything happen on Tuesday you weren't necessarily expecting?
We had, there was one person in particular who was just a boss when it comes to, that's an old term, by the way, good old 2016. But they were killing it with some of the rolls, and they were rolling really, really well. I can't remember. I think it was T.S. Dalla, which was one of our party members. He just kept rolling real high, and he just kept hitting those checks like it was nothing. And he did save a few of the situations from going completely under. So I think that was kind of the highlight of just something that kind of surprised me, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, and you said already that you threw someone in a belly of a boat full of water.
Yep, I had a sea serpent drag him from the side of the ship underneath and into the belly of another ship. That was a lot of fun, because I don't think any of them was expecting that to happen.
Mm-hmm. More surprises like that planned for next time? You can't tell us they're here, some of them.
I'm going to say this. Keep an eye out because you never know. But also don't make your DM mad because your DM can make things happen that you don't want to happen. No, that's the beauty of it.
All right. You heard it from Kaj. Loki of DMs. All right. I have one more question for you, Kaj. Tell me about this emote, the Mimic.
The Mimic. It's classic. So I don't know where exactly it originated from, but it's definitely one of my most favorite creatures in pretty much anything. Like there's a lot of games and a lot of tabletop things that incorporate mimics into them. It's basically just, a treasure chest that isn't a treasure chest. So you go up to it thinking that there's loot, and next thing you know, you're getting attacked by some creature. It's definitely one of my favorites. It kind of gets rid of, people from being too greedy. So they go up and they just try to open the chest. The next thing you know, they're getting attacked by something. It's like, okay, I'm not getting loot here. I'm fighting for my life now. And I think that's kind of a nice little trick you can play on your party every once in a while. Just tossing a mimic in there, and you can kind of make them whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be a chest. It could be like any kind of trap that they go over. Like you can do a door, but behind the door is a mouth that has teeth.
Right.
So, but the chest is a classic. I enjoy it a lot.
You could lose your hand.
D&D jump scare, basically.
I love that. I'm imagining, some kind of kind of situation. All right. So, Kaj, before we wrap up, is there anything? First of all, chat. Do you have any questions for Kaj or anything else we missed that we really need to talk about? Let's talk about that.
I will answer them as best I can. However, I'm not that good yet. Don't think I'm God tier for this because I'm not.
Well, I mean, people can answer too, so we're just going to give it a second.
I mean, yeah, a lot of people have been pointing out a lot of stuff that I've noticed and that I've learned from. So that's definitely one of those things where everyone can kind of learn from each other, and I think that's pretty cool.
That's an important part of what we do actually in this particular show. Is have those conversations and figure out.
I am liking these mimics, and I'm feeling that these mimics are kind of lurking a little bit too much over here. I think I'm gonna pass on that loot this time. How much damage would it have taken for me to knock Carver out of the serpent's mouth? I don't know. It depends on how much, what your roll was at the time.
What is Stream Elements talking about? Maybe Buckeye can tell us. Emote combo. Woohoo!
Oh, I see. Emote combos.
That is fun. All right. So, Kosh, in addition to doing stuff for, means we got 6 people spamming the emote. That's awesome.
That's pretty cool. I like it.
I was aiming to add hype to that, but let's hype the combo for another combo. Come on. It's like meta hype. I don't know. That's what we need to do. So for those who are looking for Kosh, because Kosh does a lot of work around OmniPixel, he is, as we've said, our DM of the What's My Role show coming up. But he also has his own channel. So if you exclamation point, what is it? So, I remember guest media. I think exclamation point media gives you some of Kosh's socials, so you can always follow him on his personal channel as well, or check him out on Twitter, that kind of thing. That one does not want to work today. It is frustrating.
I guess it doesn't. I only really use Twitter and Twitch are my main socials, and then of course Discord. Discord's like the best place for me. I'm always lurking in Discord, so. Oh, there we go.
It just needed to be told twice. That's it. All right. So, Kosh, is there anything you want to say before we wrap up about D&D or the D&D stream or anything that we've missed or you just want to reiterate?
I think the thing I want to reiterate with is like those who are, a bit hesitant about joining, or like running their own or getting involved. You don't have to choose, what's there. There's other variants of D&D you can go with. Like you've got a favorite show you like to watch. Or if there's do you want to do a futuristic, like D&D campaign, like Starfinder, for example, is a futuristic Pathfinder that's available for people to play. Or, there's another one that I was looking at playing at one point, which was the Avatar: The Last Airbender, D&D like kind of campaign set you can go with, which has everything all fleshed out for you. There's no limit. You just choose what you want to play and then, get some buddies together. You don't have to have a bunch of people playing. You can play with like 4 people. 4 to 6 people is kind of like the magic number. But the more the merrier. It's all just what you want to do. You can have fun with it. That's all I can say is just,
jump in and find out if your DM is like Kaj and we'll mess with you. All right, Laz, either Discord or we could actually make a whole would you mind, Laz, because I know you've been on our website before, can you start a new post? I want to see those characters in the website. That would be fantastic because then it'll stay as a string, right? We can do a form post.
We can definitely do it.
And then they'll all be together.
If things get a little crazy, we may or may not get a category for it. Hint, hint. But no, I'll definitely be looking out for some of those threads. I'd love to see everybody's kind of, their situations they've had to deal with, their experiences, stories are great. Like their characters, it's all a lot of fun. I love seeing the creativity. And then I'll be sharing some of my own as well, and some of the other characters that I'd like to be playing at some point. And then just kind of toss some ideas out there. Maybe someone is trying to figure out a character and they're just like trying to see some ideas that they want to do. But yeah, no, I'll definitely be posting around. I'll be happy to see some of everyone else's they're going to be doing.
And you can post some of those resources we were talking about way early on, some of the websites.
Yes.
So that's
There's
fantastic.
Quite a few.
General discussion sound good in the website?
General discussion would work perfectly. That is actually where I currently have my discussion for my Pathfinder kind of planning section, but we'll also be talking about more like we'll have recaps there eventually. We'll be having some of the new stuff that's going to be happening with new scenarios that are going to be coming up on upcoming stuff. You can kind of follow along there as well. But yeah, no, general discussion would work perfectly, and I'll be lurking in there for a little while and see what we got going.
Thank you, Stream Elements. Look at you go. That's the website.
That is the website.
I love it when a bot doesn't even need a command; it just listens. All right. So
what a good bot.
Yeah, good bot. So on that note, I think we'll wrap up. 2 weeks from tonight is our next show. We are going to be talking to a digital artist that does pet portraits that look like photographs. Some of them are pretty darn close. You have to look twice. You're like, wait a minute, that's not a photograph. So we're going to be talking to him a little bit about, and he streams that. So kind of that dual conversation about how the digital art works and how the streaming of it works. So that is our goal for 2 weeks from tonight. We're going to start a little earlier. We're going to start at 8 Central. And on that note, we are going to see who we're going to raid. Thank you so much, Kaj, for being here. Jake.
You're very welcome. Thanks for having me here. It was a lot of fun.